We are 10 weeks into the 2024 NFL season, and things haven't gotten any better for the Cowboys any recently. They fall to 3-7 with a 34-10 defeat to the Houston Texans on Monday Night Football. Welcome into Special Edition, everybody. The Cowboys preparing to face the Washington Commanders this week. We'll talk about some of the familiar faces on the Washington side of things with Isaiah Stanback, Barry Church, and Nate Newton. I'm Kyle Yeomans, but I want to start by saying at least it wasn't the Philadelphia game, guys. And there was some life, at least in the early going, from the Cowboys against the Texans. Instead of 146 total yards, they finished with 388. So now you're getting some improvements in the right direction. Are you encouraged by it at all, Barry?
As a team overall, no, I'm not encouraged yet. I mean, because we haven't seen a full, complete game from this team since the week one against the Cleveland Browns. When you talk about a complete game, I'm talking about offense, defense, and special teams. Outside of Brandon Aubrey, everybody else involved in those three phases has not had a complete game. But I will say I like the few bright spots I liked on offense were the young tight ends. Brevin Spanford and Schoonmaker as well. They played well against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I am encouraged a little bit, and that's mainly because of what I'm seeing on the defensive side of the ball. We've talked about this Mike Zimmer defense and the lack thereof productivity, and you're starting to see a little bit of spark, right? There's a little spark coming back, and usually that spark is usually in comparison or including Micah Parsons. Since he's come back, this defense has had a little bit of energy with him. DeMarvion Overshown's playing well. You even have Lawson that's playing well, and I think that more help is on the way, and when that team gets a little bit better, gets a little bit more talent there, you might see them be a dominant side of the ball.
I'm just a little bit encouraged because we got Turpin the ball. I mean, just to see him run that big touchdown like that was exciting. You know, I'm glad that Cooper Rush had another week of practice, and he will have another week of practice. So I'm encouraged that things get better for Cooper Rush, but our offensive line, that's a discouragement right now with all the injuries and trying to get these guys to play consistent.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those injuries. At one point of the ball game, you lost 3 starters down, and more significantly, Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. Both your left guard and right guard were injured in that matchup with the Texans. Nate, I'll go right back to you here. Which one is a more significant loss for the Cowboys up front?
Oh, man, that's Zach Martin. I mean, he's been playing a Warriors role all year long, man, just playing through pain. But when we lost him, that's kind of your heart and soul of the offensive line. We have, and Tyler Smith is our best offensive lineman all around, but we have TJ Bass at the right guard, and we have Austin Richards at the left guard, so we should have replacements.
I'm going to say Zach Martin as well, and it's mainly because of the standpoint of his mental and the confidence that he instills in the rest of the offensive line. It's his leadership. He has been the most productive player as we've seen in his career, but no matter how bad things get, you can always look to him for wisdom. You can always look to him for encouragement, and I'm not sure that you're going to have that now going forward.
Barry, tell me about some of these replacements that you are going to have up front. Nate just talked about it a little bit. When it comes to those two guys, who do you want to see have more success? Austin Richards, TJ Bass in those possible roles?
I would have to go TJ Bass on this one. We saw what Richards brings to the table. He's very stout in what he can do strength-wise. He's been proven that he can fill in and have great work. TJ Bass, on the other hand, he's kind of been an up-and-down roller coaster. So I would like to see more consistency from Bass, and hopefully we see that come in with this Commanders game.
Yeah, I like Bass as well. I think Bass is definitely a fighter. He gets in there, he gets after it. I think he's a man that has to step into that role when Zach Martin's void. And the times he has, he's done well with it.
And Nate, I know you're going to keep your eye on both of those guys moving forward. Who do you have more confidence in right now?
Oh, man, I just TJ Bass at the guard, but I'm just saying if Tyler Smith don't play now, I want to see Austin Richards at that left guard.
Yeah?
So that's just how I feel about the situation. Both of these guys can play, and they need experience.
Overall, some injury woes up front for the Cowboys, but good news is there are some reinforcements on the way. When we come back, who could be returning for the Dallas Cowboys this week as they take on the Washington Commanders, and could they get an All-Pro back in the secondary on defense?
Special Edition, presented by AT&T, is brought to you by your North Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. Reliant, official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys. Blockchain.com. Invest like your icons with Blockchain.com. And by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. This segment is brought to you by your North Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
Yeah, no, it's definitely frustrating. You know, it's life, things happen, but it's more frustrating when you see a team not winning. I think that's the standpoint. When you go out there and win, it's one thing, but when we losing like how we've been, it stings a little harder. It makes you want to just get back as fast as you can and help as much as you can,
A veteran wideout with the sentiment that is shared by plenty of players on the Cowboys roster that are dealing with ailments. The injury bug has hit the Cowboys, but they might be getting some reinforcements back as we welcome you back in to Special Edition. Isaiah, I'll start with you on this one. Brandon Cooks back in the fold in practice this week, at least in a limited fashion. What type of element can he bring to the wide receiver core?
He's just a well-rounded receiver. I mean, you talk about Brandon Cooks, he's a veteran. He's somebody that we've talked extensively about in terms of prior to him coming to Dallas Cowboys, what he's provided in terms of stat line. He can run every single route. He's quick. He's in and out of his breaks, and he's a sure thing at the receiver position. He's a true number 2 on this roster, and that's currently what you don't possess with the guys that have been playing.
And just listening to him talk earlier in the week, man, he said he's going to try to bring back some excitement, some joy. And that's what we need for this team. His route running, as Isaiah talked about, is outstanding, but we need to be able to try to get him the ball. Maybe he can get into the end zone and bring back some enjoyment and some happiness about playing football for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, and he talked about bringing a spark. He talked about wanting to provide a spark for that offense that hasn't had a ton of production at the receiver position outside of CeeDee Lamb and then the Kevontae Turpin touchdown that you mentioned in the opening segment. Now, there's some spark on the defensive side, too. Marshawn Neeland, the rookie edge rusher out of Western Michigan, who played in 5 games, dealt with the partially torn meniscus. Barry, having him back in the fold helps you out not only up front but in the secondary as well.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, getting some juice off of the edge is what this Dallas Cowboys defense needs in the worst part. So to me, not only can he get after the quarterback, but the guy can play the run extremely well. I mean, he has that motor that you love to see from defensive ends that won't stop. You can get him on the block, he can get off of the block, he can run fast, he can get off of that edge. So to me, this is a much-needed spark, much-needed juice for this defense coming off of the edge.
Yeah, Barry, I'm not sure. And then mainly just from the standpoint of, I think he's a young, energetic guy. I don't think that he's playing the position, the defensive end position, the way in which they envisioned it. I don't think he's as twitchy as they hoped for, but I do think that he is a force in the running game. So hopefully he's able to come in and have an impact there.
And that's what we need. We need a force in the running game. So if he can come in and get his hands inside and control that edge, turn that thing back inside, that is what we need most of all for this football team.
No, that's something to look forward to. And really, any kind of rotation at the edge rusher spot will be a welcome sight. Same can be said at cornerback, which has been decimated due to injury as well. There may be a chance to see Deron Bland back this week. Of course, he was designated to return. Now he's expected to return. He's been on the active roster due to a setback, but Barry, having a top-notch corner like him back in the fold could change the entire defense.
It could. I mean, what this defense needs the most is takeaways. And this guy is a proven ball hawk out there. 14 interceptions in the first 2 years. And I believe last year when he broke the record with 5 or 6, return for touchdowns. So to me, this not only is this guy a walking turnover, but he's a walking points as well. So to me, if you can get interceptions, if you can take the football away and provide your offense with a short field out there, that can provide dividends for this team overall.
He just makes it so that there are no good options offensively in terms of what side of the field you want to throw the ball to. Right now, you can see it in games. Trayvon Diggs on one side, they're like, okay, let's go opposite of him, and we'll be perfectly fine. When you have Deron Bland out there, now all of a sudden you're going to be looking to the slot to try to get some kind of production.
And that's exactly what is happening on that secondary right now. They are looking elsewhere. If you got Trayvon Diggs and a healthy Jordan Lewis, hopefully back this week from injury, you have all 3 of those guys starting for the first time together in a Cowboys uniform, which is crazy to think about. They'll do so up against a rookie quarterback this week as Jaden Daniels sees the Cowboys on the opposite side for the first time. Washington off to a great start, but pitter-pattering as of late. We'll talk about some of the weapons they have right after this.
This segment was brought to you by your North Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. This segment is brought to you by the NFL Fan of the Year, presented by Captain Morgan.
The Washington Commanders, led by former Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, they are 7-4. They are in second place inside the NFC East, and they've got a possible rookie quarterback that could win the Offensive Player of the Year. Nate, Jaden Daniels started the season very, very hot. He's been nursing a rib injury lately. What does he bring to the table for the Commanders' offense?
He's just an all-around guy. His offense runs through him. I mean, but he's throwing 6 to 8%. That's leading all rookies and probably leading to most of the veterans. This guy is smooth. You cannot rattle him. He plays like a veteran, and most of all, he has great anticipation and accuracy on his passes.
He's all those things that Nate just mentioned, but he also has a heck of a system that he is facilitating. Cliff Kingsbury has done a great job of putting him in a position to be successful, giving him high precision passes and giving him a lot of versatility in the looks that he has. A lot of times he's in a position to always make the right call, and that's a great job by the offensive coordinator, giving his young quarterback a chance at success.
Yeah, this man is pretty much cool, calm, and collected in each and every game. It's hard to rattle him, and being a rookie, that's extremely impressive in my opinion. But when you look at what he brings to the table, it's what all defenses fear. It's a dual-threat quarterback that can not only run with his legs, but is extremely accurate and makes great decisions with the football. Washington has them a good one for years to come.
Well, and Barry, it's not just a dual-threat quarterback. They've got a dual-headed attack in the backfield as well. Brian Robinson Jr. working his way back from injury. Austin Eckler's turning back the clock. He looks like he's Los Angeles Chargers Austin Eckler yet again. What does that do for an offense, especially when you have a quarterback that can run as well?
Oh, it gives you the multitude of factors that you can use offensively as far as the run game. You got a ground and pound guy in Brian Robinson, but to me, the matchup and the guy that you got to fear is Austin Eckler. I mean, this guy can take it between the tackles, outside, and he is a dangerous receiver out of the backfield. You try to put a linebacker on him, he'll mix him up out of the backfield and gain great yards with the yak. So to me, you got to make sure you understand where Austin Eckler is at all times, but this dual threat running back system, it's a problem.
I see what you did there, Barry, mixing it up, and Thanksgiving's on the cusp. All right, listen, Eckler is the change-up back. The thing is, it's one thing to have personnel, it's another thing to use it. So I'm going to go back again to the offensive coordinator in Kingsbury and what he's doing with these two. Brian Robinson is a guy that wants to get downhill. He is physical. Okay, and I'm not even talking about the old school song. Eckler is the guy that they use on the swing screens, okay? They try to get him out in space. But the thing is, you have to respect both of them. If you don't go with the swing screens, they'll throw it. If you do go with the swing screens, and they'll have the running lanes for Brian Robinson to run it up the middle as well. They don't mind putting both of these guys on the field simultaneously as well, so it's very difficult as a defense to kind of key in on who to take care of.
I just want to echo, he makes you, Cliff Kingsbury makes you with these two running backs cover the whole field. Eckler outside, inside, Brian Robinson mostly inside, but he got the ability to go with a home run too. So they got two nice backs we have to pay attention to.
And they've got some weapons on the outside, guys. Again, we talked about it with Atlanta, with Detroit, with Philadelphia. This is a Washington team that has built their team up front. Terry McLaurin helps lead the way. Nate, what does he bring to the table for the secondary, and how are they going to challenge the Cowboys?
I had to go to my boy Isaiah on this one because I was wondering what he does well, because he seems to do everything okay, not nothing especially great, but I tell you what, man, he's the leader of that team.
Yeah, he's super consistent. He's able to run all the routes. He's a great possession receiver, and as soon as you get kind of lulled to sleep, he'll take you over the top for a big play. He's not a guy who's going to necessarily light up the stat book all the time, but if you try to sleep on him, he will remind you what he's capable of. And again, coupled with this offensive running game, he becomes a big threat.
Isaiah, along with the weapons on the offensive side, tell me about the defense and what they bring now.
Pressure. These guys bring pressure, and we all know, obviously, here in the Cowboys Nation, what Dan Quinn's capable of. These guys have all the personnel that Dallas had, and they have a little bit more, honestly. Okay, you have the defensive ends and Dante Fowler and Darrell Armstrong that the Dallas Cowboys Nation is familiar with. But also, I think the second level for these guys, the linebackers, is really the cream of the crop. You have Bobby Wagner and Frank LeVeaux. Those two right there are monsters. Bobby Wagner is a tackling machine, first ballot Hall of Famer, will be. And LeVeaux, he is a freaking rice rocket who just shoots the gaps and hits you in your chest.
Yeah, offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys, you got to get ready. You got to get ready in this instance. We know what Dan Quinn brings to the table as far as his defensive line. He loves to run those stunts. He loves to confuse the offensive linemen out there, and he has a lot of players that are able to do so. You hit the nail right on the head when you talk about Bobby Wagner. This guy has turned the clock back, sideline to sideline. He's the leader of that defense, the quarterback of that defense. They're only going up from here.
Only going up from here, and they've got a coaching staff in their first year as well. And you just talked about it, Dan Quinn, a familiar face. He's not the only one. Who are some of the familiar faces that the Cowboys will see this week taking on the Washington Commanders, and how big of an impact have they played out in the DMV?
This segment was brought to you by the NFL Fan of the Year, presented by Captain Morgan.
I mean, Q, I loved him. I'm sure there's a lot of guys here that loved him. Obviously, haven't talked to him since the season started, but in the offseason, you know, he still reaches out and checks in from time to time. So, you know, Q always going to be one of the favorite guys in my book. You know, he's one of the best coaches I had, and I still love him like, you know, mentor as he was here.
Lots of love still remaining from the Cowboys locker room, and Malik Hooker talking about Dan Quinn and really how that team had been led by Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., and some of the familiar faces that the Cowboys will see this week in Washington. 5 players, 5 staff members as a part of this Washington team currently that were on the Cowboys in the past. 7 of these names were on the Cowboys last season. So recent Cowboys as well. There's the list fully. But guys, I'll ask you the question. You've all done it once or twice before. What are some of the challenges of playing against a former coach or former teammates whenever you've had to go up against those guys in the past? Barry, I'll start with you.
Well, the challenges to me is, you know, they know your tendencies. They know your strengths. They know your weaknesses. They know how to attack you. They know what you're going to do out there to try to have positive plays out there. But to me, I used to love going against former teammates, whether, you know, they left Dallas and played somewhere else, or when I was in Jacksonville coming back to play Dallas, you get to play the guys that you basically went to war with. And you go out there, you get the talk noise in between the white lines, and after the game, it's all love. So to me, you know, I loved going against former teammates when I was playing.
Yeah, it's fun. The reality is you know who has heart and who doesn't have heart. And you know who's going to quit. You know where that line is for that individual, if they have any quit in them. And if you're facing somebody who does have some quit in them, regardless if they're your teammate or not, you're going to try to expose that at any given opportunity.
You have had pity. I have had pity on my ex-teammates when they played with me. But when they left, I punished them. Punished these boys, Cowboys. That's all I got to say. I don't like the X thing. Barry, you lead this show?
Yeah.
I'm against you, dog. I'm against you. Don't lead this show. I love it. I love it.
Don't go anywhere, Barry, please. Don't do it. I don't want to see that between you two. That's the thing, though, is Dan Quinn had a lot of love here and a lot of success here. I mean, you were talking about stats earlier in the week on DallasCowboys.com about how much different this Cowboys defense is now that he's not around.
Yeah, when Dan Quinn was here, this Dallas Cowboys defense was a top 10 defense in every statistical category. Now he's not here; they're at the bottom of the league. Dan Quinn's defense in Washington is now a top 10 defense in every statistical category. It follows him. Turnovers follow him. Excited players follow him. Guys that are undervalued and underrated follow him, and they surprisingly, somehow, some way, always find a way to be impact players.
Yeah, and what to me Dan Quinn brought to this defense last year in the years he was here was just that leadership. You saw players wanting to run through a brick wall for this man. They believed in every word he uttered out there on the football field. Whether it was a win, lose, or draw, they knew they had the guy in the right position to go ahead and get the job done, and that's what he brings. So to me, you're going to see a lot of, in the pregame, you'll see a lot of those young Cowboys players going over to Dan Quinn, dapping him up, showing love, because they understand how great of a coach he was here.
And it's going to be a challenge for their current coach, Mike McCarthy, to try and end this 5-game skid. When we come back on Special Edition, it's time for Keys to the Game. How do the Cowboys get back to their winning ways on the road?
Closed captioning is brought to you by the Texas Lottery. Cowboys scratch tickets from the Texas Lottery are here. Play today. And to watch more Dallas Cowboys content on your connected TV, download the Cowboys Now app on Amazon Fire, Roku, and Apple TV. Special Edition, presented by AT&T, was brought to you by your North Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. Miller Lite, the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. And by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys.
Cowboys Commanders, Week 12 of the NFL season, noon on Fox this Sunday. Isaiah Stanback, Barry Church, Nate Newton. I'm Kyle Yeomans, wrapping up Special Edition. Barry, keys to the win.
Stars got to play like stars. You know, Micah Parsons, Diggs, those guys got to step their game up and lead this team in the right way.
Create some turnovers. You got to get some turnovers. You got to get some momentum and some mojo going there.
Offensive, you got to play ahead of the chains. You cannot let this pressure get on you. You can't let unleash Quinn and those guys on you. You got to stay ahead of the chains.
And Nate, who comes out on top in this one? Who's going to win it?
You know what, man? I've been always going with the Cowboys, man. But this week right here, bro, when we do win this game and break this losing streak, 1 point. Man.
By 1 point. I thought you were about to switch it up on us. He said not so fast. He went all Lee Corso on the thing.
A homer.
Once again, noon kickoff on Fox. You can catch all of us on Cowboys pregame live starting at 11 Central on TXA 21 and DallasCowboys.com. We'll see you next week with more Special Edition.